I think the focus of our attention and the focus of the preaching, the focus of a teaching, the focus of the worship, the focus of the music, I do feel that it's become increasingly more about us and less about him.
Welcome to Sacred and Strange. Welcome to Sacred and Strange. My name is Jay. I'm your host, and today I'm with a good friend and I consider mentor, Rip Wahlberg, out of Central PA, originally Connecticut, which is why we let him wear Yankee hats still. But really excited. Rip has been a really close friend for over a decade now. Watched his kids grow up, helped me grow up. Super wise, super humble, has spent years leading in the church and recently stepped into some new areas of still leading, but looking different. Has his own podcast. He's got a book. He's got some cool stuff coming out, but really thankful that you jumped in and you agreed to do this, because you definitely could have said no, but we're excited to have you. So Rip, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Jay. Man, I'm happy to be here and excited for you and what God's doing with you guys. And so my name's Rip Wahlberg. I am from Connecticut, and my wife and all my kids, we moved down here to Lancaster, Pennsylvania about 19 years ago. And I have been in ministry. I have been bivocational since we closed the church. We closed the church about just under 4 years ago, which is actually going very fast.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Time flies when you're having fun or trying to heal from ministry.
Yeah, there you go.
So while we're in ministry in that formal sense, I was always running a painting company. And so I've been doing that now. I've been working on some Bible degrees and whatnot. And I'm actually getting close. I just started into the thesis portion of my degree. And that's not too overwhelming yet, but it's very intimidating. Like you feel like I feel like I'm stepping onto something that I may or may not actually belong and qualified. And I'm like, wait, but their job is to help me do that. So,
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'll breathe a little. Yeah. So, but I really enjoy school, because like for me, the learning it's not just fun, but it's beautiful. And we could probably go there a little bit, but when I started the other night, I started looking at what could be portions of my thesis, and I started to tell Anne Marie about it. And shortly after that, her eyes just glazed over.
Oh, we can definitely talk about trying to talk theology with your wife. And
I'm like, this is just incredible. She's, yeah, you can see the look in her eyes. Is like, I'm glad you like it.
Yeah.
So
man.
I'm learning how not to be upset by that.
Yeah.
It's not her problem. She's not anything. Like, it's okay. And it's probably the way of most marriages and most people that enjoy biblical studies and so forth. And that's okay. So.
Yeah. No, that's real. I find
you found it too.
Anytime I'm like reading some NT Wright or some Dallas Willard, it's like I have to go super surface, or I get why are we talking about this? This is my thing. This is your thing. Just get to the point where I know more about Jesus, and you can glance over all the contextual stuff and all the hermeneutics and all the exegesis, all that stuff. You can pass over that. Give me the meat and potatoes of like, why should I care about this?
I think the other night, what was probably going through Anne Marie's mind is, so we're going to lead a small group about this. and I'm trying to tell her, like,
this triggered her pastor's wife trauma.
Yeah, exactly. And she's kind of trying to probably think through, like, how is this relevant?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, well, that's going to be part of the trick, but it is. And I'm like, because I kept saying to her, like, this is part of the story that we're part of. We can either be part of doctrines or we can be part of a story.
Yeah, that's good. I definitely
So,
don't want to be part of doctrines.
well, that's one question that I ask a lot of people. So tell me, why
Because
don't
that
you want to
makes
be
me
part of
feel like I need to
doctrines?
be a lawyer rather than a friend. That's
Yeah.
why.
Okay. Yep. That's a good revealing of your heart. Like which I'm going to just guess that comes a little bit from your dad, but I think you absorbed it anyway. And it's who you
Mm,
are. That ministry is highly relational.
yeah, it's gotta be. It's gotta be.
Well, for
It's
some, it's highly institutional.
sure. I just when I look at it's one of the reasons why when Aaron and I were processing through and really starting to dream up of Porch, it was like, w- do we want to do church traditional sense? Do we want to do what it's been, or what is that? And it always landed back on the I'm not interested. Not that there's anything wrong with it for the people who connect with it that way or whatever, but I'm not interested in creating another program thing.
Yeah.
I want to be a friend.
Right.
I want to, Jesus said, I no longer call you slaves, I call you friends. And I always think of that's the process that we're called to go on, right? Is like you start off lost, you get saved and go on this relational journey of master slave, and you keep the master part, but then there's got to also be the transition to I want to be a friend. I want to
Yeah.
know your heart, and I want to reveal that heart, and I want people to walk into that heart too. And I think that's the greatest privilege and responsibility we have as disciples is to walk people into that relational dynamic. So yeah, absolutely. Definitely got it from my dad, got it from some other people and you. Lots of
Yeah.
the people that I saw that were like trying to do something different and be a pioneer. And
We definitely try to put relationship first. And that I think was one thing that was hard for me in when I stepped into the pastoral role that I didn't anticipate. Cause like I always loved the church. I'm a the way I would describe myself is a highly relational introvert. I'm not
yeah,
sure if those two things go together actually, but
it's
that's the
called
way I
an
would just
ambivert.
an ambivert. Is it
Yeah, legitimately, it's
seriously?
called an ambivert. Yeah,
Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
I can't pay you, but I can give you that information.
No, that means I'm supposed to pay you a little bit. That's for that one. An ambivert. Okay. So I'm a
Yeah,
highly relational introvert.
yeah.
And so organizational church, I always enjoyed it. I always loved it. I've always wanted to give back to it. But I found that when I stepped into a pastoral role, the organizational part of it was really hard and I didn't understand why.
Mm,
I think it took me, I think it took me close to the end of while we had the church to really start to figure those things out. I don't want to say I'm not made for the organizational, but it's that I think my approach to it is it's relational. And why don't you just do the book? Like this. And
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
in my mind, it's not that the Bible is easy to figure out, but it's like you're just supposed to just do it. This is not hard. Just do it
Yeah.
kind of thing. So I had a lot of growing to do while we were leading. I think I've grown as much too since I haven't been in ministry
Sure.
right now in a formal sense. So I'm still ordained. The vineyard still ordains me, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah.
But in the formal sense, it's been nice to have some time off, and we're actually kind of like stepping into some capacity again. And my view on it is much more collegial, much
Hmm.
more, yes, I want to go deep. I want to do some of the things that I've been studying, but I also am more aware that the key is to take that, how you have to be able to take that content and make it applicable and probably make it enjoyable too. So, how
Yeah.
do you take it without dumbing it down? How do you make it interesting?
Yeah.
And that's a skill set on itself, I think.
I think for having sat in on quite a bit of your teaching, you are a gifted teacher. And I think that when I look at not just Vineyard, like those of you who may not know, grew up with Vineyard PK. Like that was super thankful for that heritage and all that. But I think one of the things, and I don't think it's exclusively Vineyard, that we've pushed church leadership into is this idea of leadership as a pastor. If you're gonna if you're gonna be involved and be successful in ministry, it's got to be the pastorship, right? Oh, that's the right word, pastorhood or whatever. But you're gonna be a pastor,
Mm.
and I think that there's some moves in the last 15, 20 years to redefine that a bit and move away from that. But I think it's done a disservice for people who it's actually not their call. And it's not that,
Mm.
not to say that you're not pastoral, but like if I'm a teacher and my spiritual gift set, right, is to be a teacher, or I'm an evangelist and my spiritual gift set is to be an evangelist, and understanding there's grace to operate, if we're talking fivefold, in all of them in given times, but my bend is in that direction. And you're telling me the only role and room for me in church leadership is a pastoral role. You're making me tie my arms behind my back. I feel like it's not setting us up for success.
Yeah, absolutely. How about this one too? If you're if your bent is a teacher, but the pastor really doesn't teach, the pastor preaches. And we always have this tension between preaching and teaching.
How do you define that? Because I have a definition, but I want to hear your definition. How do you
Yeah,
distinguish?
I think teaching is literally just genuinely teaching. I'm gonna I'm going to define preaching as either sharing the gospel, or in our present day, I think preaching has really become life lessons from the Bible. And I'm trying to state that in a way that's gracious, because I don't
You
mean to
don't have to be.
slam. Yeah, well, I'm not trying to slam
Mm.
genuinely well-intentioned people. And I'm also not trying to call people dumb or ignorant whatsoever. And I mean that sincerely. I think a lot, most preaching today, and I was thinking about this the other day, has this become the derivative of not having as many trained, theologically trained pastors in the pulpit?
Mm.
That what has become popular, and most of the popular names are not teachers today,
Yeah.
they're preachers. But what you're getting is like how to live your best life now from the Bible, from the pulpit. And I it's like nuggets, but with man, this is going to sound so bad, without a lot of substance and depth.
You're saying there are more morality lessons or
You
something of that nature.
you either get morality lessons and then you're left with this God's waiting to get me
Mm.
relationship, or you're getting,
Like a how-to guide.
sometimes it's how to, sometimes it's, shoot, I'm missing the term for it, and I'm missing a word for it. So I apologize for this going on and out of nowhere. Okay, let me just back up, because I think I described it without defining it. How would you define it?
Preaching and teaching.
Yeah.
I have a much simpler, I think, probably less well-rounded idea. I always look at like teaching. Someone who's gifted as a teacher can open up the word and educate me on how to make this a part of my life, or how does this work.
Yeah.
And I think preaching inspires transformation or inspires movement for me. So like when I look at a gifted teacher, some of the teachers I've sat under, like Dan Farrelly or any of them who are gifted teachers, when I leave that, I feel like I've been educated. I have a better understanding of how the text was written, why it was written, and how to now take that information and integrate it into my life. When I sit
Mm-hmm.
under a preacher, someone who's actually gifted as sometimes even just as an orator rather than exegetically gifted,
Yep.
I look at, I won't name any names, but someone who's actually gifted in that, I leave being like, I love Jesus so much more and I want I want to move somewhere with him in my life in this area. Like I want to be transformed in a way. So when you say the gospel message, I think that is what the gospel does, right? The gospel should
Yeah.
inspire us to be closer with the Lord or have some sort of transformation. So that's always been my definition. I've been fleshing that out
Okay.
recently a bit more, but I think teaching is I learned something, like actually learned something, and preaching is I want to something needs to change or something needs to transform.
Well, I like that because it shows the value of both. We've been raised on both, and yet I was also before that, I was always brought up in an either or. And
Yeah.
so my mind still tends toward either or thinking at times, but probably in my places of weakness and insecurity. And so I'm looking at it as an either or. You're bringing up positives of both. And I think that's great. The thing that's hard for me is that I have a bent toward teaching because for me, to know the word is to know God.
Yeah.
Because like if the Bible is God's revelation of himself to us, then to know the Bible is to know him.
Sure.
And I see preaching as more trying to get people in the door. I think it has its place. It just oftentimes preaching feels more like shallow to me.
I think maybe there's a third option, which is that some are neither teaching nor preaching, they're just talking.
And is that a good thing or a bad thing? Doesn't have to be
I
either,
don't know.
really. It depends on the
Yeah.
content.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm always like, I
You know
think
what
when
I
I
wish?
was good.
Sorry, I
No,
apologize. I
good.
cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I was when I was younger, I think I would have been quick to give an answer to that and be like, no, there's gotta be right or wrong. And now I'm like, I think the Lord is good enough to use anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the one thing I wish the church had more of presently, I think we have drifted so far toward like self exaltation with a facade of God.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is this I think the focus of our attention and the focus of the preaching, the focus of a teaching, the focus of the worship, the focus of the music, I do feel that it's become increasingly more about us and less about him.
Mm,
And that hurts my heart.
mm.
Like I ache about that thing probably more than anything else. And again, I want to be careful to not to say like it's all it is. And if everybody just agreed with me, it's not that. I just feel like it's been accelerating toward humanism as opposed to the focus on God.
I think that's a lot of our culture
For sure. For
and
sure.
this in the Western world, a lot of it's how do I feel right now? What do I want right now? What makes me feel good right now? How do I avoid pain right now? It's a lot of it's the sometimes I think, and I think we've talked about this before, but I think it's that we've moved away from raising disciples and moved into a place where it, you could almost go to a Christian conference, a Christian convention, and not tell the difference between the what's the format there as far as speakers, tables with CDs and teachings and stuff. You almost couldn't tell the difference between that or if you walked into a New Age conference
Mm.
where it's the same format. You got speakers, you got people selling all kinds of stuff,
Hawking their wares.
and I don't want to say that they're exactly the same, but I'm saying when you look at that, the experience isn't necessarily different unless the thing happening over here at the Christian conference is that we're in my mind, I think we're if we're not raising disciples and we're not teaching people how to follow Jesus and to lay their lives down at his
Mm.
feet, then what are we doing?
Well, and then, but the direct result of that, of which I agree with you, is that in order to move toward discipleship, again, let's say to move back toward it in any significant way, there will have to be more of him and
Yeah,
less of us.
Sure.
Because discipleship implies the necessity for transformation.
Yeah.
It implies that necessary change. Without it, it's just simply education. And if it's not showing us what God and who God is and reflecting to us how different I am from that,
Yeah.
then really what is it?
It's a great question. I think it leads
Right?
me into something I want to ask you because I don't actually know if I know this. How how did you get into ministry? Because I don't think I actually know this story of when we met, you guys were already in Lancaster for probably a few years at that point,
Something
probably like
like
5 years,
4 to 5 years. Yep.
and already doing the thing. How did you get from, were you doing ministry in Connecticut? What was the moment for you where you said, I need to be a disciple, I need to lay my life down, and from there got into ministry and eventually relocated to Pennsylvania?
So I'd always, from when I was 15 years old, I had gone on a summer missions trip. Do you know teen missions?
Yeah.
Ever? Yeah. So I did that the summer right after my mom died. Like she died April, I left June. And
Wow.
like a mama's boy who never liked being away from home, and I go away for the whole summer, get homesick and all that stuff. And
Sure.
before that and whatnot. So,
Whose idea was it to send you on that?
well, it was already in the works. And
Okay.
then my mom
Okay.
died. She died suddenly. We didn't know. And she died out of nowhere. So I go on this missions trip there for the summer. You have devotions every day. You're in your own devotions. You're talking with people. It's just God all the time, all day long, which was right up my alley, even as a 13, 14-year-old. It was right up my alley still. I come home sometime later on. I'm like 15 probably. And I'm talking with my brother, and I kind of reflecting on this situation. And I was like, oh, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to be a pastor.
Mm,
If I had to say it now, I would have said, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to teach the word of God, because I differentiate those two now, calling and
yeah.
skill set and whatnot. Fast forward, I was trying to go that direction. Then I just, not in a salacious way, but I get into young adulthood and I just lose my mind, and I have no focus and trying to figure out what do I want to do with my life. And it's all so big that I can't focus anymore. So then I wanted to do everything. Then I meet Anne Marie. The rest of there is history. We get married, no qualifications for pretty much anything. And our first son, is getting ready to be born. And I had been feeling this thing inside for months. And the way I described it was, it felt like I was at a four-way intersection crossroad, and I couldn't see to the other side of the road, but I couldn't go anywhere yet. And I knew I had to go forward. I just didn't know what that was going to be. I didn't even know that there was change that I wanted or needed or was coming. And right before Blake was born, I had an encounter with God at church. And like the pastors up there just preaching, we would visit an Assemblies of God church with myself and Anne Marie while we were engaged and married. And
Okay.
Blake was born when we were pregnant with Blake. And so right in this time at that church, God just says, that right there, that's what I've called you to do. And it was just a divine God moment,
Yeah.
powerful, indescribable, except to go, doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. I know I had an encounter with God type stuff.
Yeah.
And that set us on a track of where we eventually found that we could do formational training in the vineyard that I had been a part of, and that were also a part of at that time back in New Haven, Connecticut. And so we spent time, just a number of years, training doing lay leadership and stuff. The Bible always came pretty easy to me. I had a really good memory for remembering all the stories, all the names, all the places, and a lot of the type of content. It just was like I could absorb it like a sponge. So I thought, out of having all that Bible knowledge from all through my grade school and high school, I thought, well, this pastoral thing, I'll probably be able to get into that from here pretty quick. I looked at Bill Elander, and at one point I said, Bill, how long did it take you? He goes, from the time God called me to the time we moved out here to plant the church was like 9 years. And I thought to myself, good Lord, if it takes me 9 years, I'm going to die. I thought, for sure I'll do it in less.
You're in your early 20s at this point?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just didn't know. You don't know. You're still wet behind the ears, and you know nothing.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, that thought turned into 12 years later. We were actually had the church down here turned over to us. But when we moved here from Connecticut, it was another moment where God said, you're going. There's a whole story of us coming here from Connecticut. We have family here and stuff. So Anne-Marie always says they were the seed to get us here. And there's there's total truth in that. But 4 months after we moved here, I was painting in Connecticut, but I had people working for me. I come here, I know nobody, 6 mouths to feed plus my own. And I just take a job painting. 4 months later, I go, Lord, what in the world was all that for? You don't do this type of upheaval. There's no record in the Bible that you do this without a reason.
Yeah.
So I said, I was kind of like, so we're here. So now what's the reason? And as sure as you and I are talking, I heard him say, I brought you here because I'm going to give the church to you. I'm going to reassign the family and the pastor and his wife that planted the church, and I'm going to give the church to you. Don't do anything for it. Don't try to do anything. Nothing. Just get involved. I will give it to you.
Wow.
And he would remind me of that no less than once a week for over a year. I've lost track of how much time it was, but it was probably 1.5 to 2 years. I think it was 1.5. He would remind me. And then he would tell me when they were talking about me and us. I'd be out painting, just doing work for myself and whatnot. And the Lord would be like, hey, they're talking about you and this whole thing right now. Really? Wow. Okay. So by the time they approached us, it was not uncommon for them to say, hey, let's get together and whatnot. We were somewhat social with them and somewhat just because collaborative, right?
Sure.
And so they said, we had booked a dinner together. That morning, we're getting ready for it. I never, ever told Anne-Marie that God had been telling me this because she was freaked out about being in ministry to begin with. And we had tried and failed miserably in Connecticut anyway. So I was like, I'm not going to freak her out about any of this. I decided to hold on to the whole thing. So the Sunday morning, we're getting ready for church and we were going to have dinner with them that night. And God says to me, they're going to talk to you about this at church tonight. Really? I almost said to Anne-Marie, this is what they're going to talk to us about at dinner tonight. I said church tonight.
But you needed her to go.
I meant at
right?
dinner tonight.
But you needed her to go to the dinner, so you didn't say that.
Exactly. Yeah, I needed her to go to the dinner. So we're sitting in church right after that. And the Lord says, I want you to do a fast. Okay. How do you want me to do the fast? I never was good at fasting. I'm still not great. if the Lord commands me to fast, I can fast rather consistently and well. If I decide to fast and there's a cookie in front of me, I'm probably going to hell for that. So he says, you need to do a fast. I said, how? He goes, start your fast Sunday night, break your fast at dinner on Tuesday. Do it for 4 weeks. Really? Okay. So they talked to us that night at dinner. And as soon as they started in, I could have told them every single detail they said to me, to us.
Wow.
We've done this. God's moving us out. We want you to pray about, would you pray about taking the, I could have told them they were going to move on. I could have told them they were going to ask us to take the church and so forth. They get done and they say, what do you think? And I say, well, I've got something to tell you. And I turned to Anne Marie and said, and by the way, I have something to tell you. And I proceeded to tell them everything that I just told you, like how this started. Yeah. And they're like, wow. And Anne Marie was basically, and I don't mean this to in any way disparage her. Her response inside and then later on was like, no, hell no. And usually I would have gone at her about it. Like I would have really tried to work her over about it. And in this particular thing, it was God was saying, this is why I told you to fast. Because 2 weeks in, 1 week in, so week 2 of my fast, and he says, or we have a conversation, and I said, well, what do you think? She's absolutely not. There's no way I'm doing this at all. I do not want to do any of this. And so basically it was like, okay, then I'm just going to fast. I didn't tell her. No, she knew I was fasting. God was like, do not get hard on her. Just let her, I'll take care of her. I've got this. Okay. And so we had another conversation a week later and way into the night till 3 a.m. And all of a sudden she says, well, let's just pray. And so we pray.
For any of the young, recently married, nearly married, or want to be married men, when your wife says at 3 a.m., let's pray, it's just either going to be real good or it's going to be real bad, and you should just do it.
Just do it. So we pray. And literally God comes to her in that moment and speaks to her. She went into the prayer going, heels dug in, absolutely not. Came out of the prayer going, well, all right then. Jay, like that.
Oh, I get it, man.
What?
I get it.
I'm like, what do you mean, all right then? She goes, oh, we'll do it.
That's hilarious.
What? Yeah, God just came to me right now and said, you got to get with him. I'm in this, man. And get with him. And so she did it. And to her credit, so we together, the 4th week of the fast, just simply prayed together and tried to bathe it in prayer together. And eventually from there, after that 4th week, told them our answer was yes.
Wow.
I'm not sure if it was the best decision or the worst decision we ever made. For nobody else's problem, but just, again, one of those, I thought I was going in ready. And then the story that comes after that is even, I'll say even worse. That's when Aiden died, was after that.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. So like months later, after we said yes, on May 18th, Jerry read an announcement letter to the church on a Sunday morning of this transition. And 3 weeks later, Aiden drowned.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was in Pennsylvania. I thought that happened before you guys even left Connecticut.
The reason you probably think that is because he died back in Trumbull where we lived.
Oh.
but they were visiting, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So it was supposed to be like a 9-month transition that turned into pretty much like an 18-month transition or so,
Yeah.
something. Yeah, a very extended time. But that's the general story.
What was the, because I've thought about that before as a dad, right? I don't know if it's happened for you before, Aiden. I'm assuming it did, but I've had moments of you run through those scenarios in your head, right? Of protecting your kids, losing your kids, all that sort of stuff is,
Yeah.
and obviously nothing can prepare you for that. What was the reason though? Like when I think about that, you taking over this church, it's been I mean, at that point, what, 14 years of essentially preparation between
No, it was like
getting
12. When I
12
said
years?
12, it was like not till I marked that till we took it over.
Okay. So 12 years preparation. You did a little bit of ministry in Connecticut. It was,
We did a ton of lay leader ministry, a ton. But anyway,
and then you're going to take over this church. You're
yeah.
3 weeks in, your son drowns. What kept you going forward? I would have been like, I'm at least in my mind thinking about that. I would have been like, I don't know that I can do this. Find someone else.
The cynical side of me would say probably selfish ambition. The the servant side of me would say calling, and the older side of me would say stupidity. Like I was too dumb to know better.
Yeah.
And that's mean that like fairly tongue in cheek. I'm fine being self-deprecating. I'm not trying to overdo it. I think there was some I was young. I wanted to do that. But let me see if this is maybe getting a little off your question now, but Jay, I'm not pastoring right now and I'm still studying. Like,
Hmm.
not just sitting down each night to read my Bible. I'm still going through classes in seminary.
Yeah.
And why? I don't have a job prospect on the horizon. I don't have. So, what's that drive? It's not, it is the joy of learning, but it's the hope of something to be able to offer, like
Mm.
when this is done. It's because why do you hone a skill without a result already in mind? I'm not sure why those people.
Insanity, usually.
Well, that's
That's
the point. What made me say yes when we went through such a tragedy and
yeah.
want to hold on? That's I'm not setting I'm not saying this is a good thing. That's how powerful this thing is in me. I don't know if that's good or indifferent. It's not bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know which it describes. So I'll let other people define it. I'll let other people define it and describe me about it.
Yeah.
You know,
Maybe we'll have a couple like psychiatrists or something listening and they
hey,
can hit you
I'll sign a waiver and you can ask my therapist.
up. No, it's just it's interesting. Like how many people I know have such inspiring resilience, and that's what I want to call it for you guys. Like I know you because I saw it firsthand. Still, even just a few years ago, like the stages of whether it's the grief or the processing and all that sort of stuff, but to have the resilience to put one foot in front of the other and still say yes, whether the reasoning behind it is crazy or not, there's still a measure, I think, of having to say, my marching orders didn't change. I need to move forward and have the resilience to do that while leaning into the pain in the process of not just losing your son, obviously, I would imagine a lifelong journey of processing.
When you lose a child, I think if you do it well, you are 7 years before things begin to feel and normal.
Yeah.
We were 7 years to get to that point. We were 11 years before things started to feel like we were out of the clouds and out of the fog and actually going to move forward in a substantive way. And that there was no more genuine threat from the effects of that tragedy.
Yeah.
That was, for us, it was like 11 years to get out of the fog and into moving forward in life in a substantive, meaningful way. To want to.
Still, even that, to be dealing with that and walking through that and having to hold each other up, you guys as a couple and as a family, and hold the people up in your church at the same time who are probably calling you at all different times in crisis, just doing the normal pastoral stuff. Like pastoring, anyone out there who doesn't know this, pastoring is really hard. You're walking with people who maybe 50% of the time are taking your counsel. You are loving people in their mess.
50% is generous, and that's not to
50% is
be,
probably good.
yeah, that you'd be incredibly successful, let's say.
Exactly. But to still, that's, you guys have, and it's something that I admire. Aaron and I have talked about before, like the resilience to do that that's got to be supernatural grace or craziness or both.
Well, for sure, it is definitely God's grace. And there cannot be another like acceptable reason, because humanly, I just described to you everything about me that's human. Why would we still do that? Is just the grace of God. Otherwise, there's got to be some drive in a person. There's got to be some stuff. You've got to think about the call. We could probably dig up some pros and cons about the value of calling, but this is definitely one of the pros, is that if you don't have a significant life impacting moment experience of a call, don't try. Just do something else in life.
Yeah.
Because like you said, ministry is hard. When I got ready to get into it in the formal sense, God said, this is going to touch every single hidden insecurity that you have. It will touch every single one. And Jay, without fail.
Yeah.
And for years, most of the time, it felt like I was standing, please excuse the expression, but it felt like I was standing in front of people with my pants around my ankles. You just are that exposed in your frailties and your inadequacies.
Yeah. And it's thrown at you.
Well, and it can be weaponized against you.
Yeah.
We had that not once. We had that a few times. It was weaponized against us. So ministry is incredibly hard. And the crazy thing is, you probably have this too. Can you see yourself doing anything else when you start to read God's word? Do you just read it, or do you feel yourself communicating it?
Oh, it's alive. It's not a play on words.
Yeah.
That it's a living word. It's alive.
But does your brain start to put together communications about what you're reading?
Yeah, all the time.
Mine does all the time. I can't sit down in God's word without doing that.
Yeah.
You have that similar.
Yeah. 1,000%. I can't. I'm reading through Habakkuk right now because I was like, I'm not, surely I won't find something here. And it's still like the fact that Habakkuk goes through this journey of complaints and then the Lord answers, it's like my brain starts going off like, oh, you hear me. It's so simple, But that whole dynamic of the back and forth is, oh, you actually like this. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that's coming to my mind while I'm going through that. And obviously there's more depth to it, but
My
I can't.
brain from there starts putting together a message
Yeah.
intuitively, just structuring it.
Yeah.
Whether it's what's the word, what's the language, what's this, what's the oh, this tells us something about God, blah 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 blah, blah. On
Yeah.
and on and on. And what I'm saying in that is that if anybody can ever see themselves doing anything else,
Do it.
then do it. And don't ever look back and feel bad, ever.
Yeah. Man, there's been so many times, and I'm still young and I still consider myself green in many ways with this journey, but there's been so many times where I've been like, I'll hit up Indeed and be like, I could do something. And then I'll come back and be like, there's nothing else. It brings me back to that moment where Jesus is asking his followers, who am I? And a bunch of them leave. And then he turns to his disciples and, are you going to leave too? And Peter's, where will we go? You have the words of life. And
Yeah.
that I will always come back. I'm looking on anywhere else, or I start to fantasize or dream about I can do something else. I always come back to that passage and that concept of I don't know what else I could do.
And when we closed the church, right on either side of like right before the last meeting or right after the last meeting, in that season, I was becoming very clear that while I have the role of a pastor, I'm built to teach. The harder thing is I'm not interested in teaching in a university. I want to teach these amazing glories of the story of God to people in the church. And so I started to realize, oh, my part of what's been hanging me up a lot of this time and what I found difficult about pastoral ministry is I actually score high for pastor, but I scored just a little bit higher for teacher. And that's the thing that gives me life. So to communicate God's word in meaningful, substantive ways, that just, I started to recognize that is when my heart really is beating fast.
Yeah.
And so I just started to be able to, it gave me a permission. That's it. It gave me a permission to just own it. Not to go around, I'm a teacher, I'm a teacher, I'm a teacher, but to actually say, I was created to do this. And so now I'm going to work at developing that skill even more.
Are you dreaming up anything, or is the Lord giving you any insight as to? Because I think what you're talking about speaks even to the church at large, in that I think the Lord's doing something new with raising up. Like I look at Tim Mackey and some of those more
Yeah.
guys who have done a lot of ministry, but now are leaning into some of that teaching, or leaning way more into that teaching aspect of, we've gone from the pulpit to now the Lord's doing something different with us because our heart is to get the word in people's hands and help people get it, and to people come alive in the word like I do. Is the Lord putting anything in you or giving you any vision for what that could look like as you're going on this journey?
He's clarified what it is, not what it will become. And I would say he's clarified what the content is. I don't feel comfortable yet that he's revealed the exact vehicle. So like when you say Tim Mackey, the vehicle is Bible Project,
Sure.
but the content is biblical theology,
Yeah.
the story of God. And so the language that I have been able to put together for myself as I get ready to, eventually I'll launch a blog, but I'm laying that foundation now. The language is, we're starting a small group in the church that we go to, And so when I did a promo video, it's all the same. We're going to study the Bible. We're going to learn to understand the Bible, the story that the Bible is telling, and your place in that story. But the first thing is the story. The secondary is our place in it. Because what did we say before? That I think we've reversed these things. If we take the Bible as the revelation of God to us, that it's God's revelation of himself, if that's first, then the story is first. Our place in the story is second. But right now, I feel like in order to keep people in the chairs or draw them into the chairs, we've made the individual in the first seat.
Yeah.
And so what I've been saying is, and amazingly, the story is even more beautiful than we thought it was. So I grew up in the church with all doctrines. It's not that I could tell you all the doctrines, but you're being taught from the place and the viewpoint of doctrines. So how are you saved? Well, the Catholics believe this, and we Protestants believe that's doctrine of salvation. But when I ask someone these days, if I told you could be part of our group, if you believe like we believe, or you were created to be part of God's story, which one's more compelling to your soul? Now, I used to ask this of people that are your age and younger. Now I ask it of people my age. I've never, ever had a person tell me, I'll take the doctrines, thank you very much. Everybody, I say, what happens to your soul? And they're like, I want the story. And so the one thing is the content is I'm going to try to keep developing my ability. I'm going to keep working at my academics so that I can sharpen the skill of conveying the story and help people learn the story.
Yeah.
So the story is God built a temple and his presence there to dwell with man and to be together with us. At the end of the book, at the consummation, the presence comes back and we're together again for eternity and everything's now corrected. Yeah. The other story is God's king of the whole thing. Yeah. And we're his representatives in his kingdom. The church is an expression, but it's not the kingdom. The thing that it's about is his kingdom. And in the end, he dominates everything that's rebellious, settles the chaos, and his kingdom is there eternally without opposition, once and for all. The third story is we were made to be his bride. The other analogy and metaphor, whatever you want to call it, we're not only tenders of his garden and his temple, we're not only a kingdom of priests with him in his kingdom, we're representatives in his kingdom, we are also his bride. And at the end, you not only have the wedding feast of the Lamb, but you have the consummation. You have all of the wedding and analogy in Revelation as well. It's there.
Yeah.
And then the final one, and your dad and I go back and forth on this. He believes it's there. He just doesn't he's not as fond of talking about it.
You got to tell me so I can bring it up as much as possible.
It's Exile. I call it Exile. But I just had a class in it, literally finished the class a week ago. This guy did the same thing, and they call it the mission of God. And so the story about we're called to join God on his mission because the original intent of God was fouled up by humans. We messed it up. We get kicked out of sacred space. And God is the one that, instead of just leaving us there eternally in our state, set about right away to start redemption, to bring all of his exiled sons and daughters back. Jesus is the culminating pivot point of history for that redemption work. And now he not only invites us to join him in bringing others home into his family, he not only is calling every human being back. As Michael Heiser says, he demands it.
Mm.
But he has invited every human being to come back into the Father's house. That's the one of the four that at the end of the book is finished. The rest go on eternally. That's the one that finishes. It has an end date to it.
So you're saying it's like he uses, like, exile is the redemption tool? Is that what you're...
Basically, yes. Whether he uses it or not, it's the problem of humanity in God's story.
Mm.
It is just like everything else. Just what's his name with the kingdom says, it's now and not yet. It's both done and awaiting fulfillment, awaiting completion. So
Yeah.
it was finished at the cross, but the exile is now, like, all the coming home is, as Heiser says, until the fullness of the Gentiles. So I want to be involved in helping people learn to understand their place, to understand God's word from the viewpoint of of his story, and learn to think about it in terms of our place in his story.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because biblical theology is this new old thing.
Yep.
Like, it's been around forever.
It was the first thing.
Yeah. And now it's just coming back into... I was having a conversation with a friend a few weeks ago, and it feels a bit like this callback to biblical theology is like the Jedi coming back.
Jedi come back.
But
That's
it's funny. Like this, like we had this, and
Yeah.
systemic theology took over. And I would put the disclaimer of, I'm not anti-doctrine in the sense of, I'm not anti sitting down and be like, what can we learn and understand about God and understand about how the kingdom works and understand. But the issue is, like I think you were pointing to, is when we create an idol around those things to where it says, if you don't believe this piece, you're out of my club. That becomes the problem. And so there is this movement back into biblical theology.
Yeah.
And I think there is a need for more voices in there. Because I remember, I can tell you, it was during the pandemic when I started going on this journey. And I remember my dad introducing me to Mike Heiser. And I remember having a full meeting with my team and my wife and being like, I think my dad's a heretic. I think we were getting into some of the weirder stuff, the Genesis 6 stuff, Table of Nations stuff, but what he was really getting into was moving into a biblical theology worldview. And I remember having that meeting and being like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know do I go to his board? What do I do with this information? And then I remember listening to Bible Project just happened to also be going through some of that stuff. And I started listening to some of Heiser. And I remember having a conversation with you about some of this stuff and being like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't crazy. And then had this wild thing happen where I started to be like, this actually feels right. And it was like someone flipped the switch on the Bible for me again. And I started going, oh my gosh, I found the ancient Jedi text. I found the thing.
So as the Jedi come back, did you say to your friend, so long as I can be Luke Skywalker pre Ryan Johnson?
Yeah, of course.
I'm gonna help this. I'm gonna be Luke Skywalker with biblical theology, but not the Ryan Johnson's.
Yeah, not the hermit living alone somewhere. No, it's a funny analogy, but it feels like there's like a heritage awakening thing coming back into the church, because it feels like it went from being this obscure, whoever knew about people like Heiser, and I think Wright to an extent leans this way as well.
But he does. Go ahead.
But it felt like it was this niche idea within the church, and now over the last, I think through the pandemic, it's gotten much more of this is the thing.
What's interesting is that Tim Mackey with John, his video guy, was able to do something unique in putting it in video form. So you take story and combine it with video, unbelievably powerful, right?
Oh yeah.
Heiser was interesting because he was able to do it in long form monologue. And when you
Yeah.
listen to when you were younger and I was younger, like we were starting to hear all this. Well, you can't preach for 40 minutes anymore. You can only preach for 35.
Yeah.
And then it was 30, and then it was 25. And all of a sudden you start to see on the other side of society, while the church is now trying to barely keep people interested for 20 minutes, 25 minutes is a long time. All of a sudden you've got podcasts that are long form for an hour and a half, 3 hours.
Oh yeah. And people are eating it up.
And they're devouring it. I'm not saying we need to talk theology for 3 hours, but what it tells me is that there's a shift and there's a desire, and there's not one way to do it. You like,
Yeah.
I don't even paint Heiser as he actually is charismatic, not theologically. He's got charisma, but he's dry as a bone.
Super nerd.
A super nerd. But that's what gives him charisma.
Do you want to know how he hooked me? I
With
listened to him for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, use Stranger Things as a way of describing
I could see that.
unseen
Yeah.
realm. And I was like, yeah, he put language to things that I felt was true in the Bible and felt was true through just weird experiences and different things. And he was able to take this sort of higher knowledge theological concept and bring it down so that someone like me could understand it by using something like Stranger Things as a way of creating metaphor and language. And it was like,
that's incredible.
That's where I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
And that I can totally see that for you, because Blake was all into Stranger Things, and I was just like,
it's going to do, but
so no, that makes a lot of sense.
It's good.
Yeah. So you want to know what hooked me? Not from Heiser. I was getting ready to do a class in undergrad, an Old Testament survey. I had done New Testament survey first, then getting ready to do Old Testament. And at the time I was like, oh man, these are the big classes. These are the really hard ones. And so the professor for Old Testament, nicest guy. Oh, such a good guy. He gives us that the first email welcome. And he goes, for any of you that thought that New Testament is better than Old Testament, he said, I'll tell you right now, by the time you're done with this class, you're probably going to be more interested in Old Testament. And I went back to school to finish my first degree strictly for New Testament Holy Spirit purposes. And so when I read that, I was like, when I read him saying that, I was like, you're nuts. There's no way. We did the Old Testament survey by Hill and Walton. It's still sitting here. And this is John Walton, one of the authors who I know.
Yep.
And we're reading, this week, we're reading through his section on Job. And he started in with the retribution principle. I don't know what it was. I was done. And I would start in the Old Testament survey book going, this is more beautiful than I thought. And then I had a couple other, along the way, I either had a few other classes or I didn't even know we were doing biblical theology. But here's the crazy part. My degree says bachelor's degree in biblical and theological studies. I didn't even know. Had no
Wow.
clue that's what they were giving us exposure to both. And my hair was getting on fire when we were going through the courses that were biblical theology based.
Wow.
I didn't even realize it, but I just got little bits, and I would read things, Jay, that I'd be like, this is more beautiful than I thought it was.
Yeah.
Same thing. I'm supposed to participate in communicating these truths,
Hmm.
communicating the story. And I had the emotion of fear and dread would fall on me because it was like, woe is me. I'm not skilled enough to do what they're doing, but I know I'm supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Not as good. It's not a comparison of good of them. This is what I'm supposed to be trying to communicate.
I think you're describing what I would probably look at as like there were the weight of it.
Yes. Yes. And I would be in tears
Yeah.
because it was so good. And I'm ill equipped yet.
Yeah.
But how do you say no? Oh my gosh, I have to keep going.
And I think what you're touching on, right, is really even the biblical idea that it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's not about you. If he
Yeah.
said to do it, you do it. And he fills in the space.
Yeah. And you know what? One of the biggest things that has been a life lesson for me now in this period, I just sent your dad some stuff and he goes, liminal space. Oh my gosh, that's speaking to me. And I'm like, yeah, that's not surprising because when I read that book, liminal space was the thing that jumped out to me and made me cry because we had just closed the church. And so in this time, one of the most powerful lessons I've learned is just show up and do my best. On my time, I'll keep working at learning and develop more ability. When I get into when I am, let's say when I'm presenting, that's a crass way of saying it. But when I'm in that moment, just show up and do your best and care for people and try your best. That's a
Mm,
very different mindset than what I took into ministry and what I even came out of ministry with.
yeah.
I've had to learn a lot from there.
Yeah.
Very uncomfortable lessons that I had to walk through and have a lot of revelations about. But still, you know what? When you get to the point of, like you're saying, it's not about you, it's just try your best. It's actually very relaxing. There's like very little striving.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I can still get into a space of getting in my head. Like I just spoke at a French church on Sunday and the leading up to it. I mean, it's very different right now preparing to speak with three kids than it was preparing to speak with even just one kid. And the preparation, I was really stressed out and was like really just struggling to get my thoughts together and get things down. And during all the way up to when I got to the church and during worship at the church, I just kept, the Lord reminded me of that. It's not about you.
Mhm.
And just kept running that through my head. And you're right. There's a freedom that comes with that. There's still a weight and responsibility, but there's a freedom that comes with the more that becomes your reality, the less you actually carry.
Mm, right.
Um, and it's a lesson I don't think I graduated with a degree in social work, but a minor in biblical studies and had to do some pastoral classes because everyone from NIAC graduates with at least, or at least did while it was in existence,
Yeah.
graduate
That
graduate
was
with a
such a
minor.
good school.
Oh, I
Sorry, go
loved
ahead.
it. No,
Yeah.
yeah, I loved it. I could talk about NIAC forever, but
Yeah.
no one told me it's not about me.
And to think that I was blind to the fact that was my approach, that was my mindset, is at best, it's embarrassing. at best.
I think when you don't have that mindset, you definitely do embarrassing things.
But we have at that point too, I got to give ourselves grace
Yeah.
because we got to be trying to grow. With this group that we're going to do, we're going to start out doing the first two. In a couple of weeks, we're going to start, and I'm going to take this group through like how to read the Bible from the 4 themes. But in the fall, we're going to do the first 2, Temple Kingdom. And half of me is scared out of my mind that it's basically going to be like what Anne Marie's experience of me the other night when I was working on what my thesis could be. That this is going to be their response too. Half of me scared out of my brains that that's going to happen for them. And if I guess my conviction these days is maybe, but all we're going to try to do is try to make that interesting and enjoyable, and also try to make the whole thing enjoyable, like relationally make it that a priority.
Yeah.
So that there's good relational, good interaction, because relationships are really the mortar to anything anyway. And so I want that absolutely to be really do our best to help that, which then if it is somehow dry on the other side of it, maybe it compensates, meaning this is for people, not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good, man. I think that when I look at the Gospels, I always look at, I think Jesus' greatest discipleship moments were around the table or around a fire.
Yeah.
And creating that space of we're gonna open the word, but we're also gonna be in community, and we're gonna be in family, and we're gonna be in an intentional atmosphere of coming to the table together. It's one of the things I think Nicky Gumbel got so right with Alpha was the idea of breaking bread, right? Every meeting we're gonna break bread and we're gonna sit at the table together. And it sounds like for what you're wanting to build with, that's at the center. And I think that's something you can't do on a Sunday. Well, some people probably do it on a Sunday morning, but the church at large is not doing on a Sunday morning.
You can't do large church with that.
Yeah.
You just can't. That's the thing that one of the things that you definitely give up, right? To scale, you're going to eventually lose the relational. And then you can say, well, yeah, we got small groups. There can be caveats about whether or not small groups even compensate or not.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, how did your message go then that morning?
I think it went well. I told them all my goal was to only preach no more than 2 heresies, and I think I hit that.
All right, so let's nerd out a little bit. What do you define as heresy? How do you define heresy?
Let me give a thought out answer rather than my knee-jerk reaction to that.
Okay.
I think at blanket statement, heresy is anything that exalts me above God and takes people's eyes off of God.
Okay.
I think simplest form, that's how I would look at a heresy, is anything that exalts me and anything that would turn anyone's attention from exalting the Lord, whether that's to exalt me or exalt themselves. When I look at Gnosticism and look at some of those, even some of the more modern day, won't name them, but some more modern day heresies, it's all.
Don't name them. Just name who speaks of them.
Sure, you want the prophet that wrote it down? It's all. We were touching on this earlier. I think it's all rooted in individualism, humanism. You can throw capitalism out there, but I think at the core root of it, it's anything that. I guess I don't know if you would say this. I feel like it's anything that promotes an idolatry.
I think that is a very solid response. I wouldn't have come up with that one, but I think that's really solid.
What would you?
historically, heresy is, if you look at church history and you look at the theologies, heresy has everything to do with who do you say Jesus is.
Mm.
And so that's why you have to hold both intention. He's both God, eternal, and human. So throughout church history, whenever they tried to describe one over the other, and so that's why, like, how salvation works can be a heretical topic. Like, you can end up in heresy because Jesus is the way. So depending on how you get to heresy, like what you do with salvation, how you get there, that can be heretical or not. Most of the time, though, it's done in trying to how they explained the either his divinity or his humanity when they tried to do one at the expense of the other. So anytime they tried to elevate one over the other, there was big arguments, and eventually a council determined that thing as heresy.
And Santa Claus punched a dude over it.
Pretty much. Yeah. Here's what's interesting. When you speak of biblical theology has been around longer, I relate doctrines to science in this regard. When we try to take our 21st century worldview and overlay it onto the biblical text,
sure,
we're not going to end up in heresy automatically, but anytime that we try to answer this thing of Jesus,
yeah,
with a scientific answer, every single time they have ended up in heresy in church history, without fail. So it's not to say systematic theology is heretical, not by a long shot. We just need systematic theology to undergird biblical theology. We've laid biblical theology aside and we've elevated systematic theology doctrines. So
do you think that's because with systematic theology, do you think that's because why we've leaned that way is because we have more control under that?
It enables you to move the masses through a system. You can scale with systematic theology because you can move masses through a thought line. It's harder to move masses through a story. You sit around smaller fires when you talk stories. Think about it.
Yeah.
So every time they describe the Trinity as modalism, they're trying to describe it scientifically. They end up in a heresy.
Yeah.
Every time. The only one that I've found that is debatable about heresy is the one on original sin. I forget the name of that. Not preterism, that's eschatology. I forget what it is right now. But it's the one that historically there was a guy that believed that humans are not born guilty of Adam's sin. So they were not born with original sin.
So when do we get it?
In our frailty, we will inevitably fall to it.
So then when my 2-year-old smacks his older brother for a toy, is that the moment?
Sure. You're done. It's a good thing there's grace, because I would have snuffed you out for that. But what's interesting is historically, I can't remember the guy's name that defended it. I want to say Erasmus maybe, or someone like that. And he was tried as a heretic for that view. And then they recanted the accusation afterward. It might have been post-mortem for him that he was then recanted as not being a heretic. So it's the one time that a heresy was pulled, and notice that he's not doing it about originals, or not doing it with science. That's not a debate that was going on there about, that's a theology. Well, all of them are theology, but the answers was not trying to use science to answer the theology or to explain the theology.
Interesting.
So that's the one time that I've seen. Now, there are other scholars that would probably be like, well, Rip, yeah, but there's this and that and this and that. That's fine. But it's a kind of interesting one. So my point in asking the question was because much of the time what we do with heresy is we accuse the person we disagree with of heresy.
Yeah.
And heresy is much more defined than that.
Yeah.
It's never really based on something we disagree with.
Yeah.
It's way more substantive and important. Because if that was the case, obviously everybody else is a heretic and then we're the only one that's right.
And it's so wild that it's one of those things where I'm always like, do people read their Bibles? And what do they make of Paul being like, desire unity? Do whatever you need to do to be united. Don't let division come in. To the point where it's called Protestantism because we protested.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's called denominations because we're divided.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are we doing?
We divided over the things that we disagreed with. And I think maybe God's been unbelievably kind for these.
Oh, yeah.
What is it? 1,500 years?
Well,
I forget.
No, 600 years.
600 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been amazingly kind. Well, no, but you know what? The church divided long before that.
True. The Orthodox, the East and West divide on it. Yeah.
Over.
That was legit, though.
A phrase. Over one phrase.
But it wasn't just the phrase. It was also because I don't know how much we want to get into. It was also because of it was because of the papacy.
Yes, it was first among equals.
Yeah.
But they were dividing over both led into it for sure.
I think I'll skirt over what I think it was politically driven, which you could argue most divisions have been politically driven.
Yeah.
Going all the way to Anglicanism and all that sort of stuff with Henry. And anyway.
Well, and think about it. So even when Luther, who's held up by Protestants as a hero historically, you didn't want to live in his utopia. Because if you disagreed with him, you died.
Yeah.
Holy cow. So
yeah.
And all those utopic, that's the word, endeavors, they end up so terrible.
Yeah. John Alexander Dowie in the early, was it the 20s or something like that? Oh, but it was started 1920s. Zion. Yeah, 1920s. This guy, he was one of John G. Lake's mentors, that had led massive revival movements, started up a private community of believers. I think he called it Zion in Illinois or something like that. Went completely off his rocker 2 years.
Yeah. Well, how did we end up right over here?
I don't know, man. We just went with it.
Yeah.
But I think where we're going at is, I think what the Lord's doing with the church right now, and you really saw it start to really gain momentum, I think, with the pandemic, of the sort of call back into relationship and call back into getting into what unites us, getting into why is it that this word is alive, that this text that we've been given hasn't felt alive to the degree that it has when we start to look at it like God is in this.
Yeah.
This is his story. This is all about him. And through that, calling disciples into following Jesus.
Yeah. I find that it's like it leaps up off the page. I used to say in 3D living color. And the way I describe it now is like saying, have you ever been to Israel? Anytime you ever hear someone that says, I went to Israel and it was amazing, the gospel came alive.
Yeah.
And their hair is on fire with joy and energy about it. I would sit in classes in seminary about this, and we'd be doing this on Zoom with 12 people or more. And I'd have a 3-hour class and I'd be full of more energy at the end of 3 hours on Zoom than other times. Because we'd be talking about from the Bible, from the culture, the language, the worldview, the history, the archaeology that it was written in.
Yeah.
And we did this once with the book of Jonah. The guy, my professor at NIAC at Alliance, brought this PhD archaeology student in. She did an amazing job setting up the whole picture of Jonah, the geography, the archaeology, how that information fed into what these Ninevites really were like. And Jonah's response, where God called him from, where he went to, that God found him and he started his journey, was like on the opposite side of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
He only had to go like from here to here. And instead, he ended up 1,500 miles away and had to go back
in a
to
fish.
Nineveh, and then in a fish. and
like the worst cruise ever.
And what you realize is Jonah was more upset about the fig tree he was sitting on, or the tree he was sitting under that dried up. And God was more upset about the worst, most despicable human beings on the planet at that time, who, by the way, were not Hebrew. They were Gentiles. They were Goyim. And God wanted them to hear salvation. We did that kind of course. We did that kind of discussion in this biblical theology. And I wanted to cry. What it showed me was, how kind is God?
Yeah.
And when I saw how kind God is in that type of way, it reflected to me how unlike God I am. I wanted to cry and worship him at the exact same moment.
Yeah.
Because it was that glorious.
Yeah.
And I still didn't do that good a job with it as she did that night. But my goodness, I keep saying that's how good this is.
Yeah. And you've probably found this too. I've found that the more I get stuff like that, specifically from the Old Testament, the more I understand that, the more I hear people who really get it and I learn it. I go and pick up the Gospels and it's like I fall in love with Jesus all over again. It's Jesus suddenly is like, I could feel emotional over right now. It's just like, he's so much bigger than the VeggieTales storybook Bible I grew up on. But I can't appreciate that. I can't get to that place unless I get the whole story. And I get the whole, well, we can't get the whole God, but understand better the story God was setting up to tell us about him, so that when he would show up on the scene, I'm now going, oh my gosh, this is Jonah. This is David. This is Noah. This is Psalm 91. This is all this stuff. And it's not a text anymore. It's a living, breathing man.
Right. Yeah. As N.T. Wright says, then it only makes sense then that God would become human, because he's that good. And you're right. It would bring us, it really should. And I don't use that word much, but I'll say it this way instead. It's right that it would bring us to tears.
Yeah.
And so that's my long way of saying, in a big agreement with you, that I do feel like the next, I hesitate to say wave of God, because I've actually become a little disinterested in revival. And I know there's a big push about revival. There's a big hype about revival going on. I don't mind it. I'm less interested. I'm less interested than I used to be. Put it that way.
I think it's.
But
I
let me
just
say
brought
this.
up. Yeah.
Let me
go
say
ahead.
this. Oh, shoot. No, I just forgot what I was going to say.
You're less interested in revival, and then I messed you up.
Whatever. What were you going to say?
No, I just spoke. I talked about that in my message on Sunday. I
Yeah.
talked about semantic satiation. Have you heard that term?
No, but do go
It
on.
it's when you hear a word so much that it doesn't mean anything anymore. I can't even remember what that doesn't sound like English anymore. That doesn't sound like a thing. That sounds like you're just making up sounds. And I can't actually, the meaning, the depth of it is lost its meaning. It's lost its purpose. So I talked on Sunday about how we throw this word revival around all the time. And I feel like Inigo Montoya. I'm like, that you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That is at a bare minimum a whole other podcast by itself.
Oh, sure.
That subject. Nope. Still forgot why I was Oh well.
Yeah.
That's all right.
It's all good.
I have found the story, the four themes, the language, studying the language actually. It's, you know what? Not everybody has to do it. Most people aren't going to do it. It's why you have schools and so forth. But one thing I think is a good word is all the work that anybody would put in to learning how to understand their Bible is worth doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's totally worth, whether you do comparatively a lot or a little, whether you're world-class scholar or whether you're seat warming individual, any work that you do to understand your Bible is really worth doing. It's eternal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
So the sacrifice is worth it.
Yeah. I think that's a great spot for us to close out this one. I know we touched a little bit on your journey with losing Aiden and you wrote a book about that journey, and definitely going to have you back on soon, hopefully, to talk about just everything you guys walk through, and yeah, just that whole piece. It's so important. It's so central to, I think, what the Lord's done with you guys and done with you, and definitely want to have you back for that. But would you let everyone know where, because you got a podcast, you got a couple things you're doing, let them know where they can find you and get more of this wisdom?
Yeah, you can find me on Discovering God. On YouTube, you would find us on Discovering God Pod. On Facebook, you would find us on Discovering God. And the way we say it in our podcast is just look for the compass. Our logo has a compass in it. So look for the blue and orange compass. And yeah, otherwise I'm on Facebook personally and whatnot. And those are the places to find me. I will be putting a blog out eventually. We did call them 2-minute talks. I think we changed the name of that on TikTok and Instagram maybe, but definitely TikTok. There's short reels that are out too.
Okay.
So those are some places. And you can find the book on Amazon. It's Shattered, Surviving and Thriving After the Worst Pains of Life. Like we talked though, you'll probably want to search the name of the book and my name because it's probably buried pretty far under the others. So, yeah.
And that's Rip Wahlberg, like Mark Wahlberg.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not related that we know of.
That'd be cool.
It would be
cool.
You
find out there's a connection. Let's talk, because we'll get him on here and you guys can hash out the distant relation.
Well, we could hash out some distant relation. We could hash out he's got a great love for Catholic faith at this point too, which is looks sincere.
Yeah. Be great. Well, hey, would you pray us out, and then we'll see you next time.
All right. Lord, thank you for this time. Thank you for just the friendship with Jay and Aaron, the boys, and all of his family. And Lord, we thank you most especially for your kindness, your grace to us, your mercy that is new every single morning. Lord, thank you for the story that you've not given up on, but that you have invited us into, and you're calling us to join you in. Lord, as may we be people that can help others just learn to understand how beautiful the story is, and also to learn that it would draw them into your word more, that they would encounter you through your word, that all of us would continually. Lord, thank you for your amazing love, and that you desire to give it to us. Heal us, Lord, in places where we have hurts that are blocking us from feeling and receiving your love. Heal us, Lord, from places that are telling us lies about who you are, your goodness, your kindness, your compassion, and from the ways that it's keeping us from a deeper relationship with you. We pray all these things in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen. Hey, thanks, man. Love you.
Thanks, Jay. Love you, man. Bless you. Say hi to the family.
Will do.
All right. See you soon.